So let's create a worker service project. So we'll give name as a worker service using EF. It will ask for the project, so let's use worker service limited and we'll create the project. So it's got created. So we'll get default template, which will be having a log, which will be running worker, which will be printing log as a worker running at time. So first, let's see, let's install some NuGet dependency for EFCore. So since we are using entity framework, we will have to install some NuGet packages. First will be Microsoft Entity Framework. Microsoft.entity framework core. And let's install, since I'll be using SQL Server, so let's install SQL Server NuGet package as well. So now installation has been completed. So I got two packages, Microsoft Entity Framework Core 5.0.1 for Microsoft Entity Framework Core.SQL Server 5.0.3. So now prerequisites are done. So let's move to another tab where we'll be creating a model. So let's create a folder for models. Let's create a model called as user. Just create a user model which will hold some basic details of user, ID, name of the user, and address of the user. So here I have created a basic model for my demo. So now I'll create a DBContext. So I'll just name it as services. So I'll create a app DBContext for the reference for I'll create a app DBContext. To work with entity framework, we need to inherit from DBContext. Let's create a property called as DBset, which will hold my models. So as of now, I have only one model, so user. We'll say it as users. Create constructor, which will be basically having DBContext options. And pass these options to the base class as well. So this is a basic set for our application DBContext. So now let's move to another class where we'll be creating a DBWrapper class. I'll say it's DBHelper CS. So now class is created. So let's create a private DBContext. This DBContext we will be using for further DB calls. So here I'll just create two methods. One will be get all users details, and second one will be just seed of the data. So it will be used only when uh, we will be initially using the system, or when there is no data. No data is present, and we want some default data to set to fill in the database. So let's create a method which will return a list of users and name it as get all users. Currently we'll be just writing a basic classes, basic methods, and now using DBContext, since it is using options, I'll create a new one private method which will give me all options. DBContext options I'll use, which will give me have DBContext data. I'll just write get all options. There can be other ways as well. We're using option builder to create a DB options. DBContext build option builder. It will be DBContext data. I'll just say as use SQL servers. So I'll just need to pass the connection strings. As of now, I'll just paste it empty, and I'll return option builder dot options. So these options I can use wherever I'm initializing a new object for DBContext. So now method is done. Now I just need to initialize the I just need to fetch the data from the DB. So I'll just write DBContext, sorry, DBContext dot users. And then since it is a list, I'll just say list. So I'll keep a check if users are not null, then only return this data. Else create a new new empty data, new empty list. Wrap it in try catch so that we can see if any errors are there or not. So this is a basic method which will using get all options. It will create a DB context object, and using this DB context object, we will just get the list of the users, and if users are null, we will create a new list. Else we will just return back the users. So similarly, let's create a new method for seeding the data. This will be used only when there is no data in the DB. Next. So we'll create a dummy users and add the new user. Just give name as with address at DBC street by using DBContext option, DBContext object, we just call save method, save changes. So with this, it has to save the data in the DB. So our basic DB helper class is created, and we have created two methods: one to get the all user data and one to seed the data if there is no data. So let's move to our worker. Okay, so now what we'll do, we'll create a basic class which will hold the settings. I will name it as app settings. Let's create this class as static class so that we can use properties in any places. Static configurations. So if we need it, we'll use it. We'll use these properties from app setting class. So now let's go to worker class and we'll see, we will just create some basic data. We will just create some basic set of data where we will be just fetching the data from the DB. This will explain us how we can easily connect to SQL Server using Entity Framework. So it is printing the time. Let's create a DB helper object, or we can create it outside constructor. DB helper get all users will call so that it will return us all the users. And what we will write is if there are no users, first let's fill the data. If count is equal to 0, fill the data. Let's print the data. So we will pass the user object to we'll pass the list of users to a method where we will print the data. So with this we have created a mm, created a basic. So with this we have plugged in entity framework where we will get the list of users. If users count is equal to 0 for the first time, it will seed the data. Else it will print the data. This is a basic use case where we are just after each 1 second, we are fetching the data from the DB. You can have your own set of use cases. So now let's plug DBContext properly from program method. So from our entry point. So to plug the data, we first need to configure app settings. So I'll just give connection strings. So it is server name. Currently I'm using local database, and I'll just set data as worker service using EF. This is a basic DB connection string, or I can set as default connection. Now let's move to program. Let's move to entry point. So here I'll just use the data from configurations. And here also we will just create an option builder. We'll use SQL Server. We'll get the connection string from the configuration object. And we'll pass the key name as default con. And with this we have plugged the DB context as well. And we just need to add the service now. Services.add scope. And we'll pass the options from option builder. We have added our worker service as hosted service. I feel we are almost done. Let's review one more time. We have created connection strings, and we have created services. We have created app DB context. We have created DB helper. We forget to add SQL Server connection strings here. So we should not use multiple places. So hence I'll create a new web settings called as connection string. Let's initialize it. And use the same of properties in both places. So I feel we are almost done. Let's run the project. Before that, I'll just show you the database. Let's refresh it. So we do not have any database for worker service using EF. So now let's run the project. So currently we forget to add a method where it will check for if DB is not created, create the database and all. I feel we should get some error. So yeah, it's thrown the error called saying that cannot open database worker service using EF requested by login. So let's plug the data properly. Before that, I will need a host option proper a host object. So we'll create a method called as create database if not exist, which will ensure that our database is corrected before once we will start the service. So let's create this method. We will use scope. We will create a scope object which we will get from host services. Create a scope. So try catch so that any error can be handled gracefully. So let's create services from the scope. Service provider. Data context variable from services. So we will get the required service which we need. So here it is app DBContext. Using this context, now let's use database property and then ensure created. So with this call, with this method, it will ensure that database is created, then only it will move ahead. So this method will create a database if it does not exist. So let's run the project again. I'll put some breakpoints at worker class. I'll put breakpoint as well in this method as well, so that I can show you whether database is created or not. So let's run this. I've got all services. So before this line, I'll show you the database. So if you see here, there are no database created till now. The moment I'll execute this line, it will create the database. Yeah. So now let's see. Let's refresh. So we got the database called as worker service using entity framework. So if we will expand this, we will not get any tables since till now we haven't executed the code. So now let's expand this. We should get some one table as well, which will be a user table and which will have columns what we have defined in our model, ID, name, and address. So now let's run the remaining block. So I'll just see what is happening. So the moment we'll call this, we'll get some user data. If it is null, we will just create a zero count. So what will happen? It will seed the data. So again, it will call a database and it will create the new object and it will save the changes. So now for second loop, it will get the user details. It got one result and it will print the info. See in log, username, info, Rohit, and address. So like this, it will keep on checking the database and it will continuously keep on loading the data. So like this, we can have our own downstream use cases where after each some interval, we will be keep on checking how what all data are there, or for if any processing we have to do if any new data is coming in the DB. So likewise, we can write our own use cases and codes. So I have given a basic overview like how we can create a DB context in worker service and how we can call a DB and how we can uh, write a proper way of connecting with DB. So since I'm writing using it will release the connections as well. It will release the resources as well. And hence since I am using only one object, so it will be created only once. And once operations are performed, it will dispose the memory which it will dispose the resources what it has used. So thank you guys.